This is a very short video, so I'll spare you the full ad and just say that this video is brought to you by Base Strength AI. It's an app we made to make getting strong very easy. BaseStrength.com, you can find out more about that. Now on to the shenanigans. The beast, the shit talker from the UK, and the gorilla with the personality of vanilla, Brian Shaw. Now I'm not even specifically an arm wrestling fan, but I know it's taken off over the last few years or so. Some of the biggest viewed videos on YouTube were arm wrestling videos. When strength guys collaborate with arm wrestlers, they always do better. Larry Wheels had just a stupid amount of views on his arm wrestling arc. And now we have a lot of strongman rationally making a transition as they phase out of their strongman career. And it makes sense why there's a draw. It's this really primal thing, putting your arm on a table, facing off your arm against the other guy's arm. It is a very kind of simple, primitive way to dominate your opponent. And there's just a shit ton of drama around it that makes it so much fun to watch. If you've ever seen these guys face off, the drama that builds up as they get set on the table, they have to have very precise positioning. They're always volleying for position. It takes forever to get that go command, and tension reaches a fever pitch. And they're just talking shit the entire time. That's actually one of the things I love about arm wrestling. There's not this culture of weenies who are so invested in blind positivity and good feels that they think anything that looks like competitive shit talking is oppressive bullying.
Your mum is so old, she breastfeeds like this. What are you gonna do about it?
They embrace that shit in arm wrestling. It's like WWE meets Trailer Park Boys. Some of the dirtbags that come out, some of the insults that fly, it will make an insult comic clutch their pearls. Now, full disclosure, I am a longtime strongman who has a very amateurish amount of experience and understanding of arm wrestling. So if I do say something dumb or incorrect, feel free to blast me in the comments. The extent of my experience is the month that I spent arm wrestling. I worked with Derek Smith. He would occasionally drop by my gym, and occasionally we would get drunk together and he'd try like hell to convince me to do arm wrestling. And for the month that I did it, my arm got so fucked that it didn't only interfere with the rest of my training, it interfered with my life. I was a server at Macaroni Grill at the time, and I remember driving to work like this as my arm shook because the inflammation from my shoulder down through my elbow was so severe. I couldn't hold my pen as I was taking an order. It was horrific. So I have a deep amount of respect and I think a little bit of understanding for the absolute beating that arm wrestling can take on you. But aside from all that, I'm far from an authority. So the first match started in epic style. Eddie comes out, he's talking shit, he's running his mouth to Brian the whole time, and it's great to see. Now we know from their history together that Eddie talks aggressive shit, but it's in very good nature. And you can see that Brian, who rumor has it can be kind of a sensitive little giant, he doesn't take it seriously, and that says a lot about their relationship together. It's not the really mean, aggressive ribbing. Eddie's being a character, and that's kind of known by everybody. Now, Brian starts off with two fouls. Two fouls gives the other guy the win, so Eddie clocks his first win without actually pinning Brian's arm. That goes to the second match, where Brian wins pretty easily in a top roll, where he comes up and over Eddie's fingers. And you'll notice at this point, Eddie's making a big deal about slipping, calling Brian over and over a bitch and a pussy because he needs the strap.
Let's go, guys.
I don't want the strap. Come on, you need the strap. You can't win this without the strap, Brian.
Hey,
you fucking fanny.
Yeah,
absolute vagina. You need the strap. Get the strap.
Essentially, when you go over somebody's hand and you end up slipping off, that results in straps going on that glues your hands together. So it takes a lot of the hand strength and maneuvering out of the equation, and it goes into more of like a simple raw test of power. The assumption in the beginning was that Brian would be better with the straps, that he would be better in this position. So a lot of this is Eddie getting in Brian's head saying, don't be a bitch, don't slip out strategically to go to your strong suit in the straps, fight me man to man where I'm stronger, which is usually the way people frame the manly way to do things, where it suits me. Now in this third match, you see Eddie trying desperately, using his fingers, putting a lot of strain on his hands to avoid slipping. Even the announcer says Eddie held on too long, he should have slipped here. And Brian ends up getting his second win. Going into the fourth match, they do in fact slip. It goes to the straps, and to the surprise of everybody, Eddie ends up taking this. Now this brings up a really interesting point, because even though the assumption was that Brian would do better in the straps, some people have posited that Brian's strength, being so much the size and strength of his hands over everybody else, that actually he doesn't need the straps, that they don't really afford him a benefit. And if it does take that out of the equation, then you would think it would have a lot more to do with, let's say, raw upper body strength, raw side pressure. Arm wrestlers can correct me if I'm oversimplifying that, but Eddie is known to have much more raw upper body strength. So through that paradigm, it makes sense that Eddie would take it here. We go into the 5th match. There's an easy top roll by Bryan. Bryan takes yet another win. It is now 3-2 with 1 match to go. In this 6th and final match, you see Eddie continuously, aggressively moving his elbow around the table, making use of it. You see him really working his hands and fingers, re-gripping, trying to maintain leverage, and trying to hold on to Bryan's hand so he doesn't slip. Now, hindsight being 2020, many people think that Eddie actually would have been better going into the straps, and if they slipped here, they could have gone to the straps. Eddie could have won that match. Of course, we can only guess, we'll never know. But it's obvious that Eddie didn't want to do that, whether that was his pride or he thought he would be worse off. He refused to slip. But it also shows something else. It shows that Eddie seems to have a much greater command of the table. The way he's sliding his elbow around without lifting it up, the way he's walking aggressively around Bryan's hand, trying to find a leverage advantage. The consensus after this match was that Meathead Eddie, who is kind of infamous for going into the boxing match with Thor and being the worst boxer because Thor put in more time, Eddie actually looks to have put in more good quality time on the table, learning the fundamentals of the sport, than Bryan, the self-anointed cerebral strongman. I also think it's entirely surprising that Bryan, who is built up to be such a force in this sport, is actually now being kind of said to be further behind than a lot of people thought, despite his strengths.
He's just a giant. Like, he didn't have to like really arm wrestle, right? But real arm wrestle is going to give him a ton of problems. If you don't think that way, like, I don't think Eddie Hall right now could beat any of the pros. I'm 100% sure of that, right? So Brian Shaw is just somewhere there, maybe just a little bit higher.
So even though Bryan took the last match and won the whole thing 4-2, a lot of people are giving Eddie a lot more credit, and they're putting Bryan's kind of lackluster table performance at the feet of his coach, Devin Larratt. And this has long been one of the problems with finding world-class athletes to be your coach. Even though people that have spent their lifetime in the sport might have an insane amount of knowledge, it is an entirely different thing to be able to take that knowledge and apply it appropriately based on the level of the person that you are coaching. So if you are a top-level arm wrestler and you're dealing with somebody who has one of the strongest hand-arm combos in the entire world and is an absolute giant, a specimen among men, it might be tempting to treat him as a more advanced arm wrestler than he actually is because he's going straight into arm wrestling against some of the best in the world. But the fact is, both Eddie and Bryan are relative newcomers, and the types of techniques and training that they need to rely on should reflect that. So to that end, I've seen more than one person say something along the lines of Bryan needs to ditch Devin as a coach if he wants to keep going. So I think this entire thing, as far as these little side quests that these aged out strongmen are doing, I think this was a big win. I think this is more appropriate than the shitty exhibition fighting. It makes less of a mockery of the sport. It's more appropriate given their talent, but they still get to do the really entertaining thing where they build up a rivalry. You have this really dramatic one-on-one type of combat setup, and they just get to talk copious amounts of shit top to bottom. It was really a treat, and I look forward to seeing what they do in the future. Eddie says he is going into a fight and maybe he'll come back, but the comments seem to think that Eddie would be better suited staying with arm wrestling. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.